Top North Dakota oil executive has a new take on how the Dakota Access pipeline protest stalemate that's still ongoing might be broken. It's interesting in that it shows us a lot about how oil executives think about the world and what people's motivations are for the things they do and think and believe. So it's James J. Volker, Chief Executive Officer of Whiting Petroleum, who told Reuters recently that tribal grievances against the pipeline and the companies that are currently working to build it could be solved if the industry gave tribes economic opportunities. That might include contracting with Native American-owned firms for water hauling and other oil-related jobs. Well, at least he did bring up water. That was nice of him to acknowledge that water was a part of it. Here's a quote from James, who says, "We as an industry like to see them provide those services. It does provide a better standard of living for them. It does provide a direct tie to the energy business and makes them and their tribal leaders more inclined to want to have more energy development." And so asked for a comment, the Standing Rock Sioux chairman, Dave Archambault, who we've quoted in the past, said, "It's going to be very difficult for us to allow this line to come through just because some indigenous-owned company may benefit. If this pipeline goes through, we will be the first to pay the cost, even if some company or companies made some money." And very often, of course, deals of that sort are part of attempts to build pipelines like this. But the idea that if we just get some money, then all of our concerns, our historical grievances against U.S. corporations and the American government, our belief that our concern for the sanctity and sacredness of this land is being trampled and not enough due diligence is being done, we just need more money and then it'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I think this guy is trying to help, but the lens that he sees this situation through is one of an oil executive, not of an activist who's concerned about the land.
Well, allow me to be more skeptical on both fronts. Okay, so
Interesting.
Let me explain. Number one, I don't think he's trying to be helpful at all. I think he's trying to bribe them. Okay, but I'll be skeptical on the other side too, because sometimes that's how things work, and that winds up working. In fact, now I'm not taking anything away from David Archibald II, and this is a characterization by the reporter, but he said that he appreciated Volker's comments. Like, whenever somebody offers you a good amount of money, you do appreciate it, right? So now, I don't know what they're going to do. And likely this offer will not work because part of the reason is they're too late. The reason it might not have worked in the first place is because the Native Americans there might have been principled from day one. That's not a might have, like, dismissively. I'm saying that is a perfectly legitimate possibility, and they're not a monolith. So I'm positive that some of them would have said, hell no, under any circumstance. I'm also fairly certain that some would have said, that would be nice to get those contracts, and they would have tried to figure that out. But now we have 200 indigenous tribes there that have come in to help. We have all these climate activists. The climate activists are less likely to be interested in a local contract. You know, sometimes the giant organizations in D.C. have different ways of getting bribed. Now, look, a lot of them are wonderful and they do good work, but some of them have millionaires, billionaires on their boards, and they go, okay, this is great, and I want you to save the earth, but then, hey, there's a line. Let's not cross that line. But that's not what's going to happen here. Here, the activists are generally, I'm just giving you everybody's incentive structure, okay? The activists are not going to want to settle with the oil company for a local contract. A lot of the tribes that don't live there are not going to want to settle. So even if it were going to work earlier, it's very unlikely to work now.
Like, at best, it's an extremely short-term way to address a few people's concerns about the economic livelihood of the people in that region. I mean, hauling some water? These are multi-hundred, multi-thousand-year concerns. The idea that would convince many people, I find difficult to imagine, unless the sums you're talking about are absolutely insane.
I don't find that difficult to imagine at all. And again, I'm not saying it's because they're on principle or they're bad guys. If you're living in an area that is economically disadvantaged, and all of a sudden you go from not having a job to having a $35,000 a year job, that is a great step up. So I'm not saying they should take the deal. I'm saying sometimes in the past people have taken that deal for understandable reasons, because it's easy for us to sit in a studio in LA and say, don't take the deal.
Yeah, and in some cases, the leadership of an area has taken the deal and personally enriched themselves, and the regular people are just cast off on the wayside.
That's absolutely right.
Now, the sort of the converse about what this land represents, the Reuters journalist asked James Volker what he thinks about that, and he says, "I wouldn't want necessarily a pipeline to go through the cemetery where all my relatives are buried." So I think he understands on some level the concerns of the group there.
Or he's trying to understand.
Or he's at least trying to portray, like, look, I'll take fake empathy in lieu of no empathy. But also, for me personally, inside of this show, we're going to be doing a story hopefully later on. When you see the contrast between what the Netherlands are doing to ward off climate change, and I understand that's just one of the concerns at play in the Dakota Access pipelines, but it's one that I personally care about quite a bit, that we're like just trying to ram through a pipeline so we can take 500,000 more barrels of oil per day and then thus lower the cost of North Dakota's oil, which would then stimulate more demand to burn that oil. And let's just please F up the atmosphere as fast as we can before the world awakens. This is what we're doing, but in other parts of the world, they're taking seriously this absolutely vital threat to the future of humanity. And instead, we're worried about some company or some pipeline or some conglomerate making 5% more profit for 10 years. It's so ridiculous the way our society operates.
So even if you were to take the very skeptical line on how all this works, and some of the local tribes did make a deal and they got some contracts out of it and they got some good employment for a while out of it. But you know what? The protests worked even under that circumstance. Because if they hadn't protested, they would have been like, it's your graveyards, it's close to your land, it's your water, and we've been running roughshod over you for centuries. We're going to do it again. Now they at least blocked them and said, no, you're not going to do it again.
Yeah.
And if you're at least going to do that, then we're going to be a partner, and you're not going to just get to steamroll us. Yeah. And so even under that scenario, which I know a lot of you would think that that's a terrible case scenario if the pipeline got built and some people got some contracts, but that's still a better scenario than before the protests. That's why no matter what you think of this, and it's easy for me to say I oppose it, right? Because I got concerns about climate change. So, and let me give you a context of why I oppose it. Because as I said before, I don't think it's as easy a case as some people think it is, right? Because we need a certain amount of energy. There are a lot of ways to get that energy, and a lot of them are not positive. Whether it's fracking, it's fossil fuels, it's the coal industry, it's all these things. Now, there are some very positive ones, windmills, solar, etc., but are they completely ready to take over at this point? Unfortunately not. We should do everything we can to try to get them, those renewable energies to take over.
Certainly not if we don't invest in them and instead choose to go with dirty forms of fuel.
So we've got to incentivize that, we've got to do all that. But even beyond that, even me recognizing, hey, listen, we're probably going to have some dirty fuels while we transition over and incentivize over to renewable fuels. I think it's a horrible injustice that they get to privatize the profits off of those and socialize the costs.
Yeah.
So the pollution, when it leaks, the localized pollution into the water or everything else, you bear all those costs.
The extra disease that the people in the area and around the world will suffer.
And they don't. And maybe if there's a leak, they might get fined, etc. But they're never going to bear the cost of the greenhouse gases and the climate change. The whole planet bears that cost. So don't get me wrong, even if a couple local tribes are cut in on the deal and they're happy and they say, hey, listen, man, at least, we did this in partnership and at least there was some sort of rational way to do this, etc. I get why they do it, but at the same time, we still have to bear all the costs.
Yeah.
All of us together. So they get a little extra, I'm happy for them, but we all have to pay the price. So that's why I wear shirts like this, protect the sacred and live free. So I'm a guy who can make compromises, and I understand being practical. But at the same time, you never even get to those compromises, let alone fighting and winning, unless you fight in the first place. Yeah. That's why I love that they began the fight, they continue the fight. And
under harsh circumstances for a long period of time with very little media coverage for months.
And eventually, maybe this is a small win. We'll see. We have no idea how this is going to get resolved in the end. But we work towards the larger win where we get the media and everyone else to go, wait a minute, why do I have to pay the price of climate change? But I never get any profits from the fossil fuel industry or the oil industry or the rest of the energy industry. They get to keep millions, billions, a macro scale, sometimes probably overall trillions of dollars in profit, but we have to bear trillions of dollars in costs, and that's not right. And the way that we fight against that is by protests like the one they're having in North Dakota. At the Young Turks, we believe in change. We believe we can change the media, make it more independent. Come do it with us. tytnetwork.com/join.